Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for another mailbag with a theme. For this week, I said no top 20 players allowed. It's a regular mailbag, just like always, but we're not talking about top 20 players. We're keeping things fresh. We're shining a light on some of the lesser names, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Got plenty of comments also. Good participation in the YouTube posts tab. Okay, they have changed the name. It is no longer the YouTube community tab. It is now under posts. So do keep that in mind for those who are on the homepage of the YouTube channel looking for where to leave the mailbag question. I know that there is sometimes some confusion about that, but a reminder, you can always also leave a comment in my Discord. The link to that is in the description, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. All right, let's get started. There's going to be some where I'll probably take a while, but ultimately I want to run through a lot of players here. Keep it casual, keep it fast. Here we go. Comment on Bellucci. He had an amazing win over Medvedev. He is a great player to watch and for sure an entertainer. And this comment was before he backed up that win over Medvedev with another impressive win over Stefanos Tsitsipas. And it's funny, I called both of his matches last week in Montpellier. He beat Lucas Pouille. He lost to Aleks Kovacevic. And there was no way of knowing that the next week he was going to become somewhat of an overnight household name. I don't want to overstate it, household name, but you know what I mean. I mean, he's made waves. He's basically the primary storyline of this week so far is the exploits of Mattia Bellucci. Let's start here. He's an undersized player. He's 5'8", and when you have that stature, you're immediately just worried about the serve because we've seen that just cap players in the past at that height. I mean, many players we've seen just the serve limitations cap, like Sebastian Baez and Diego Schwartzman and Yoshi Nishioka and Corentin Moutet. Like, these are without fail, these players under 5'10", without fail, are the worst servers, the most lightweight servers in the top 50, top 100, whatever it is, right? And that just makes everything really hard. It does. That's not a problem with Mattia Bellucci. His serve is phenomenal. Not for his height, it's just a good serve. From how strong he is with his legs, like how much leg drive he has on that serve, a ton. Obviously, he's got the live arm. He's able to hit his spots. He's got a lot of speed on it. It's just an awesome serve. It is one of... I got to think about it, and I got to keep watching it, but I think it might be the best serve at 5'8" I've ever seen. So you get the advantage of movement still because the little guys, their footwork is sharp. They cover a lot of court, and Bellucci has all that. He's quick around the court, but he doesn't have that serve limitation, which if you look at the top 10, if you look at the top 20, you just aren't seeing a lot of lightweight serves. And the players who do have more average serves, Alcaraz, Ruud, they have the biggest forehands in the world. So it's still difficult to get to neutral against them in service games. It's still hard because they follow up their serve with the biggest forehand weapons in the sport. And it's just really crucial if you're going to compete at the highest level that you have a means on your service points of taking control and winning outright with that early firepower, that serve +1, serve +2, and obviously with the serve outright. So that's the first thing that sticks out about Bellucci. But then also he is highly energetic. He is highly dynamic. He has tons of ideas out on the court. And whether it be a serve and volley or, you know, using his slice backhand in crafty ways or drop shotting or hitting underarm serves against Daniil Medvedev, like whatever he is doing, it feels like he has a certain command of basically any shot from anywhere on the court. He's able to commit to it, and he has a comfort with just about anything. And even power tennis, right? Like I'm not even just talking about finesse and guile. If he needs to rip a ball down the line off of his backhand wing, okay. Forehand wing, okay. So he reminds me of some of the other Italians, honestly. Like, I think Arnaldi has a little bit of that. I think Flavio Caboli has a little bit of that. Sort of daredevil, explosive, creative tennis. And that's what I'm seeing in Bellucci. And I guess the negative side of that is sometimes it seems like there's not a lot of discipline or the consistency can fall off. Definitely saw that against Kovacevic. The match point kind of stuck in my head because it was 5-6 and they were in a neutral rally. And Bellucci tried to be spectacular with the forehand down the line and hit the middle of the net. Was not close. And I thought on such a massive point, what a waste of an opportunity to really almost just take a huge risk on a forehand and miss by a ton. So that's like something that kind of is singed in my brain. And there might be some discipline issues at this stage for Bellucci, which is normal for a player who plays with such exuberance. But on the other hand, it's fun to watch. It's very, very fun to watch. I'm also curious about his backhand. I don't like how the technique looks. I feel like he's muscling the ball. But if he hits it well, then I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it looks like if he hits it well. And in Rotterdam, he's hitting it well. But of course, you want to see it, different conditions, different situations, larger sample sizes, all that. So let's see. This has been fun. I'm pumped about him. He's 23 years old. He played some great matches against top players last year. They were pretty much all losses. But if you look at Roland Garros taking Tiafoe 5 sets, Wimbledon taking Ben Shelton 5 sets, there were those early signs that Bellucci had a little something last year. Beat Stan Wawrinka at the U.S. Open. Wasn't that hard to beat Stan last year, but still, it showed that he has a stomach. And it's good to see him putting it together because he is exceptionally fun to watch. All right. Next one is from Brandon. Hey, Gill, love your videos. Now that Brooksby has returned, what do you think his potential is for the year? Do you see him surpassing the results he had before his injury and suspension? Look, I do not have a lot of conviction on Jenson Brooksby. I can tell you a couple things right now. One, at the time of his suspension, I was a Brooksby believer, despite the fact that he doesn't hit all that hard off the ground, that he has, speaking of serves, probably the softest serve you will see in the top 100. I know he's not in the top 100 now, but let's say he gets there. I just felt like he had a little something special with how defensively talented he was, or he is, how tactical he is, the anticipation, the ability to redirect, the depth on his ground strokes combined with the consistency. Just those little things that don't always get appreciated that Brooksby does so well. And I thought, he can maybe be somewhat of a poor man's Andy Murray with the way he plays from the back of the court. But when you miss 2 years, I do think that can derail. Like, I'm not 100% sure. 2 years is a long time. Brooksby is a very, very funky player as far as his attributes and his strengths and his weaknesses. So it's not, to me, that creates more uncertainty because you can't really compare him to anybody. And you can't say like, oh, he's clearly just the same as that guy who's been top 20 for the last 5 years. So if that guy's been top 20 for 5 years, then we know that Brooksby can do it because they project similarly. No, Jenson is he's so out there, he's so different that it's always hard to kind of put your finger on what exactly he is or what he can be. And that was the case before the suspension and the injury, where people were watching him and it's like, okay, this guy is winning, but he just doesn't look the part. And there was a lot of debate about, is he a top 10 prospect? Is he a guy who's going to have trouble ever cracking the top 20? Who is Jenson Brooksby? So if you take that guy who is already hard to figure out and you put him out for 2 years, well, now I'm going to be even more confused about the Jenson Brooksby question. One more thing I want to say. I am a little bit disappointed that the serve still looks just so disjointed and unnatural, and what's the opposite of powerful? I mean, it's just not strong, explosive technique at all. It stays low. He can locate the slice serve. He can hit his spots, but I just thought, man, you have a lot of time off the tour right now to workshop your serve, which is the easiest shot to really overhaul and workshop because you don't really battle as much against the instinctual stuff. The muscle memory is a little bit easier to alter. So I was hoping that Brooksby was going to use the time to change that, make it look better. And I'm not saying it's exactly the same as it was 2 years ago. In fact, I think it's a little different, but it's the same in the sense that it's not a motion that's going to allow him to serve big ever. Next one from Mike. Would love a breakdown of Felix's title run last week in Montpellier, unless you're doing a separate video on it. Yeah, I thought about doing a video on it, but I didn't get to it. Obviously, I wanted to do 3. Little plug for that. Do check that out after you're done with this. If you have not, myself, Joel Drucker, Amy Lundy, we get into some really great Djokovic stuff, a deep discussion about Novak and where he's at in his career right now. We also talk about Madison Keys, all of the multitude of lessons that can be learned from her career arc and her Australian Open title. And we also discuss on-court coaching in detail. We talk about, Murray Djokovic and Juan Carlos Ferrero Alcaraz in regards to the quarterfinal and all, the philosophical coaching stuff. Australian Open putting the coaches on the court. There's plenty to get to. Anyway, where were we? Felix. Auger-Aliassime leads the ATP in titles. I thought right away from watching him in Adelaide, it was pretty clear that Felix was kind of back, so to speak. Just first of all, the way he was moving. So I want to go through a couple of improvements here real quick. And the first thing is the way he's moving. He's moving back to full speed, and that's just obviously a health thing. He's had a lot of knee issues, and that was just derailing his ability, I think, to move around the court like he wanted to. But beyond that, I think that he's done some things tactically that are maximizing his strengths a little bit better as far as especially the second serve dynamic. So the first thing is his second serve return position. He's moved back, and he's a player who is a dominant forehand side player. So if you can hit 20% more forehands on your second serve return, that's a huge gain. And when I say huge gain, that might be 3%, 4% over the course of the year on second serve points won. That's enormous over the course of the year. And I think that's what Felix might get by backing up, therefore creating more forehands on the second serve return because there's more time to run around. And now he's just hitting stronger returns. He's putting himself in a better position to win second serve return points. That's the first thing. Then you look at his own serve, and I think his second serve itself is actually vastly improved this year because he's locating the ball. It used to be body serve every time. It got very predictable. It made me hesitate before saying Felix Auger-Aliassime's a great server. I could never quite go there because I always had to give the caveat like, well, his first serve's good, but his second serve actually isn't. Sometimes indoors in the past it's been okay because he can hit it fast. And like if you're hitting a second serve 105 miles per hour, even if it's into a predictable spot, it's probably not going to get punished too bad at that speed. So sometimes indoors he would get away with it, but still it wasn't optimized because it was middle of the box every time, and the best returners are just going to take care of that quite easily. And now I am seeing him find the righty backhand when appropriate. There are some matchups where it's like you need to hit your second serve into the backhand, and he's been able to do that, but he's also been able to play tight to the sideline into righty forehands, especially on the deuce side. Like I'm seeing a lot of good slice serve, slice wide on second serves. You can really simplify it. It's not that complicated. He's mixing up his spots and locating his second serve. The third thing I'm seeing is some forehand drop shot. He has one of the most deadly forehands in the world, but it used to be that if you drop the ball short, you could give ground, and he was just never going to drop shot you. Plus, you weren't that afraid necessarily of his transition game. Sometimes the volleys aren't all that great. So you could kind of drop back, play a passing shot, make him hit a tough volley, and you might kind of steal a lot of points that way. There was a match, this was years ago, but it's another one of those things. It's singed in my memory. He played Denis Sandgren, and Sandgren was just playing the whole match on the back fence, defending. That's what Sandgren used to do. Felix just wouldn't hit a drop shot. And it was like, it was rip your hair out stuff for Felix because you were looking at the court position and you were like, oh my God, any drop shot will be a winner, Felix, for goodness sakes. So yeah, I'm seeing a forehand drop shot this year. That is new. Another thing that I'll point out, his pre-serve ritual, much, much faster. It's not drawn out. It's not so... It used to just be so, what's the word? Methodical, and I hated it. I thought it was, first of all, selfishly a little bit annoying to watch because the pace of play would really slow down the pace of play. More importantly for Felix, though, I don't think it's healthy mentally to sit in your service motion for like 4 seconds before you actually hit the serve, like actually get moving and get going. And that's kind of what it was for Felix. He would kind of sit there like a statue for 4 seconds, not fully like a statue. There was some movement, but not a lot. He was very, very static for a long time. And I just don't think that's good for the mind. There's just way too much time to think about what you're about to do. And in tennis, thinking too hard is poison. It's always poison. So there's a lot of stuff I'm liking from Felix this year, and he is incredible indoors when he's at his best, but it was really good to see him win his first outdoor title at the start of the year. And then in Rotterdam, unfortunately, he injured his toe and had to retire, actually, not withdraw. Next one from KO Slice. If GMP reaches the height of, quote, best serve bot ever, do you think he can break the ceiling of the modern era of tennis? Do you think he can break the ceiling the modern era of tennis has set on serve bots and end up being a consistent top 10 player or slam winner? I do wonder with this question, which is basically like, can GMP be the first serve bot to win slams? I mean, think about it. And it does depend on, what your definition is, right? For example, like, is Giron a serve bot? I guess you would have to say no. Let's see what Ivanisevic, I'm going to look something up. What was Ivanisevic's break percentage? I wonder how that number was. Because anything, let's see, it was 19.2 for his career. Yeah, that's not quite serve bot. That's too good. That's too high a break rate to be a serve bot. Like, let's compare that to Isner. Isner 10%. So Ivanisevic broke almost twice as often as Isner. And, the same thing. It's like, are we counting a Raonic? I guess not. So we're talking about the really tall, like, think about it. Daniil Medvedev is the tallest number one of all time at 6'6". I believe he's also the tallest player to win a slam ever, tied with Juan Martín del Potro at 6'6". So I guess the question here is, like, can GMP raise the bar, no pun intended, at 6'8" and do some of those things? I just think you need more than a serve, because you're going to need to break. Like, I can't see someone dominating enough on serve to be a slam contender on a regular basis, or to maintain a top 10 status for a long period of time, to sustain that, if you're not breaking over a 15% clip. So, like, let's look at Mpetchi Perricard's number for his career here. GMP break rate is 9.2%. By the way, he's played... Wait, what? That can't be right. That can't be right. I'm trying to see what his break rate... His break rate in 2025 is 2.5%. I mean, what is it? Has he broken once all year? Twice all year. He's broken 2 times in 5 matches. So look, he's got a lot of work to do, because it does not matter, even if he is raising, like, if he is sort of going further than Karlovic went or Isner went in terms of how much damage he's doing with his serve, particularly because he's hitting the second serve a lot bigger than them, which I think right now is where we're at with GMP. He still has a lot of work to do in order to figure out how are we breaking serve. And he's just going to need to find that, or it's not going to happen, in my opinion. From Smithy. Thanks for the great content, Gill. 2 years ago at Adelaide, Djokovic said Sebastian Korda has what it takes to reach the top 10. So far, this hasn't happened. What is keeping Korda from reaching the potential others see in him? Yeah, so this was January of 2022, I want to say. No, it wasn't January. It was 2023. Yeah, January 2023. Korda, he almost beat Djokovic in Adelaide. That was in a final. He beat Medvedev at the Australian Open. Daniil was playing pretty well, I thought, in that match, and Korda was still able to take him on. And then he made the quarterfinal. I believe he played Karen Khachanov, and he injured his wrist. So if you looked at, I don't know, the 10 or so matches that Korda played that month when Novak made those comments, he looked awesome. Like I think at the time I was saying Korda's playing top 10 level. I think at the time I was saying that. Now, that said, that was 1 month. And the fact is, there is a lot of eye candy with Korda. There are a lot of things that look incredible, that look great. I mean, the quality of his ball striking, the smooth, easy nature of his technique, combined with just like how hard the ball comes off of his racket, it's very intoxicating. He can produce a winner from behind the baseline, and he makes it look easy. So, yeah, he's a very beautiful ball striker. There's no doubt about it. But then if you dig a little bit deeper, like if you go past that eye candy, there are a lot of issues. Here are all the areas where I wouldn't give Korda an A in. Like, I would not give him an A as a grade in any of these categories. First of all, durability. So he struggled to stay healthy, and that's really important. So let's just lead with that. I would not give him an A in his movement. He is not all that fast, and therefore he is limited defensively. I would not give him an A on the forehand, honestly. I don't think it is reliable enough. I think it can be very, very, very good, but I don't really trust it. I think he makes too many forehand errors. And sometimes it's hard for me to figure out why that's happening because his technique, it does look good. And then there's some of the mental stuff. I don't think I'd give him an A and I hate being so vague about mental, right? Because are we talking about nerve management? Are we talking about willingness to suffer? Are we talking about how well he plays under pressure? I guess that's a little redundant with nerve management. Are we talking about his tactics or his decision-making, right? Like there's a lot of stuff with mental, so I don't like to just generalize. But I do think that there's a prevailing sense that Korda as a competitor is not necessarily dynamite. I do think he's gotten a little bit better at lifting his energy, like playing with energy and fire, which I think was really lacking for a while. But still, it's not all that consistent in his output as far as focus, as far as drive, and sometimes as far as clutchness goes, sometimes it feels like it's lacking. So again, I think the mental stuff is a little bit more difficult to pinpoint, so to speak, but I wouldn't give him an A in that either. So there are a lot of aspects of Korda, like that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff that to me isn't at a top 10 level. So I'm going to leave it there. A lot of eye candy, incredible ball striker, but there are issues. Oh, did I even talk about the first serve? The first serve for his height is not an A. Like it's a B plus or a B. It's not a huge weapon. It does not scare you, the Korda serve. It's another thing. He's gotten it better. It was much worse like 3 years ago than it is now. So credit to Seb for making progress on it. But for a guy who needs to be offensive, because again, he doesn't move that well, he doesn't defend that well. For a guy who needs to be offensive, his serve is it's not that big. So I gotta say, although in 2023 in January, I was saying, yeah, Korda's playing at a top 10 level right now. I believe that's true. I am not shocked that the last couple years have gone how they've gone, which might be a little bit unfair because it's not that I expected some of these injuries to pop up, which has certainly played a role. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm not one of these people at this point who is still looking at Korda like, why isn't he top 15? I don't get it. Like, I think I do get it. And I think it's all the things I just talked about. All right, next one is from a username that is not in English letters, so I don't know how to say it. Who will be the better tennis player for the next several years, Lehecka or Machac? If my memory serves, they have been close to each other in the rankings for quite a while now. Right now, they are number 24 and number 25. Lehecka is a little bit younger, has a better serve and forehand, but Machac has a great backhand and athleticism. They both prefer hard courts, and I see Tomas being better on clay, but Jiri excelling on grass. I can't even make a prediction because for me, their capabilities are so close. This is a really good assessment by you. And it's also a good question, and I don't even think that this was the only comment asking for a Lehecka-Machac comparison, which speaks volumes. It must be on a lot of people's minds right now. These guys have had a really similar career trajectory. They don't play a similar style, but it's a fascinating question. For me, Machac has more special factor than Lehecka. That said, Lehecka, what he does is it's so foolproof. It's so Andrei Rublev, a little bit of Taylor Fritz. Like, how could this go wrong? He serves big. He hits big off of both wings. He keeps it very simple. I do think, though, my answer is Machac. I think he's a little more dynamic. The movement, to me, is the big separating factor. And with the way he has built out his weaponry, he's a very good net rusher, Machac. He does have that excellent backhand that can be very offensive for a two-hander especially. And I don't think the gap between the forehands, and it definitely exists, but I don't think it's big enough for me to swing towards Lehecka when it comes to this question. And then you have the serve, and Lehecka's serve, it's bigger, and it's ahead of where Machac is at. But I do think Tomas, I think the serve will continue to develop. I think there's going to be a positive trajectory with that shot. And he already gets a lot of good swing on it. And I do think he places the serve pretty well. So ultimately, I think there's plenty of areas where Lehecka's better than Machac, but by a little bit. And then I look at the movement, the net rushing, the dynamic defense, and I just think it's not even close. Like there are more areas where I think Machac kind of blows Lehecka out of the water. So I'm gonna go Tomas for this question, but it's not an easy one. From Alex, hey Gill, you are my favorite tennis content creator. Thank you very much. What do you think about Hamad Medjedovic after following up the next gen title with a disappointing year? He recently beat Rune in Davis Cup, which could be a small positive sign. Yeah, I'm going to keep it short and sweet with this one. Medjedovic needs to move better. And I'm not even just talking about like running. I don't need him to be scrambling, but I do need him to be sharp in his footwork and his positioning, to be able to move up inside the court, to be able to give a little bit of ground when he needs to defend. And, I just think there's a certain bar that he's not clearing at the moment for movement at the highest level. But, he's got a great serve and a great forehand. He projects at his best to be a lot like Berrettini. I don't think his movement ever needs to be spectacular, but right now I do think like it just isn't meeting the standard that it needs to be at. From Gagan. Hey Gil, this is related to Jakub Mensik. I watched his US Open 24 and Australian Open 25 matches where he lost in the third round. Then I saw his results at Wimbledon 24, Australian Open 2024, where he lost. In those 4 matches, he lost 5 setters, and he was up 2-0 in 2 matches and 2-1 up in another 2. What went wrong with him? Maybe durability factor like Sinner, but he is too good a player. Thank you for making the videos. Learn a lot. Thanks. Well, first of all, part of it is physical. Part of it is that he is not strong enough yet. He's skinny. He's physically underdeveloped. Kind of like Joao Fonseca. Like these young guys, it's hard for these young guys to play long matches, which is why I was just going crazy. I wanted to explode when so many people were saying that Alcaraz was able to play long matches because he was really, really young. It's like, do you guys watch young players? I saw that so much. US Open 2022, when Alcaraz played all these 5-setters and won the title, beating Ruud in the final, and everyone was like, oh, Alcaraz has such great endurance because he's only 19. It's like, what? Are you watching 19-year-olds? That's not how it works. So I think that's part of it, but the more concerning aspect of it is I don't love his forehand under pressure. I think he gets tight on the forehand, and that is my main concern with Mensik. If things don't go as well as I think they can go, and I think he has the potential to be a world number 1, he has the best serve and movement combo I think I've ever seen out of a 19-year-old, which is why I've been so high on Mensik, and I like the two-hander, and he comes forward well in volleys. And I think he does have a lot of confidence to him. He's got good belief, which doesn't quite go hand in hand with getting tight, but I don't think he fully trusts that forehand in big spots at the moment, especially when he needs to attack with it. And that's a pretty big problem. I don't like to go all in. I'm not all in on Mensik. I am almost all in on Mensik. And the almost is because I don't like to fully back players when I don't fully trust their forehands. I just think it's so important. Look, everything is so important. The best of the best, the players who get to number one, the players who are elite and win majors, they don't have big weaknesses. I think we've seen that and we've established that. But what I'll kind of add on to that is if you're going to have a weakness, the forehand might be the worst weakness to have, other than not moving well. I think not moving well is probably the biggest deterrent, or I'll say like the biggest death sentence to trying to be an elite player. I just can't recall the last top player who just doesn't move well. I mean, the closest thing you can get is like Raonic getting to world number 4, or I mean, that's all that's coming to mind right now. I'm sure there are other examples. But yeah, after movement, I would say forehand. Like, you better have command of your forehand, and it needs to be in your bag. You need to be able to sustain aggression with it and follow up your serve with confidence on it. Next one from Cohen. Hey, Gill, do you think Alexei Popyrin just got lucky at the end of the season, or do you think he could still win big titles? Because this year he hasn't done well at all, and if he can't defend his points, he will drop. Do you think he could be top 10 one day? Thank you. Love your content. I'm a little bit worried by like the framing of this content. I don't think we should have ever set the bar too high for Alexei Popyrin. Like, he had an incredible week. Okay, he won Canada. That doesn't mean he got lucky. He played awesome. And he has a lot of great tools and great weapons. He moves well. He serves well. His forehand is incredibly heavy. His backhand that week he was protecting it probably better than I've ever seen. So Popyrin's got a lot of skills, but I mean, look at his win-loss record last year. It was 26-22. Okay? He won 54% of his matches. The year before, he won 51% of his matches. 2022, he was awful. Let's skip over that. 2021, he won 50% of his matches. So, Alexei Popyrin, 25 years old, he's never really shown that we should be saying like, Alexei, like, why aren't you repeating what you did in Canada? Like, no, that's never really been the standard that is appropriate for Alexei Popyrin given his entire body of work in his career. So I would almost pump the brakes first and foremost on expecting Alexei Popyrin to kind of do similar things, or sort of live up to what we saw that week when he won his first Masters 1000 title. From Marie. Denis Shapovalov is playing well this week, beating Fritz in a third set tiebreak. Seems he is doing better on his serve and overall performance mentally. Can you comment on this? Yeah, then he backed it up today. Another really good win for Shapovalov, who is through to the semifinals in Dallas. Today he beat Tomas Machac 7-6, 6-0. I did not see that match, so I can't speak to that particular match, but I did watch the match against Taylor, and he finally looked explosive again. He finally looked overwhelming, unplayable. The Denis Shapovalov where you don't have any time on the other side of the court. You don't have any control over the outcomes on the other side of the court. You're playing a bit of Russian roulette and hoping that he misses because it's that explosive offensively. And that Denis Shapovalov, I have not seen that guy in a long, long time. I don't know if it comes down to just physical strength and him just finally getting his legs back, which just didn't appear to be under him for a long, long time. And he's indoors. And of course, that certain conditions, like particular conditions, help him. I think when the balls are really heavy, that is a huge deal with Shapo. And folks have been saying that the balls, these Dunlop balls, they've been fluffing up and getting really heavy, and it's been difficult to hit through the court. But I think Shapo is a guy, like, he plays well at Wimbledon. Why? Those Schlesinger balls are so heavy, and it makes them it makes them slow, but it also makes them a little bit easier to rein in and control. That's where Shapo excels. I will push back on one thing. Mentally, sorry to say, to me, it's been the same old Shapo. I talked about it. I won't rehash it, but I was really disappointed in Denis's mental performance in the match against Musetti at the Australian Open. I thought that he was easily distracted, easily dejected, just a very unfocused, overly emotional performance. I don't think he competed all that well in that match. Then against Taylor Fritz, you saw a lot of that in the first set, where, I mean, Denis was letting everything bother him, whether it be Taylor hit the back of the line on a ground stroke, and Denis, has some histrionics about that, or the scoreboard, the graphic on the back wall malfunctions, and after a fault it says ace, and he just went crazy over this. And it's like, these things should not be bothering him so much. They just shouldn't. So I think physically Denis looks great, but mentally I think he looks the same, which means we might just keep getting those ups and downs, which, okay, like, that's fine. That's always been who Denis is. What was really unfortunate about the last couple of years is we weren't actually getting the ups. I mean, what was his losing streak against top 10 players until he beat Fritz? It was a long losing streak. And he's supposed to be a player who is known for being, ultra dangerous against top players, albeit upset prone. But this was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He was on an 8-match losing streak against top 10 players. Last year he went 0-2. That's it? Man, he only played 2. Okay, last year he went 0-2 against top 10. The year before he went 0-5. Then it was 2022 when he went 3-4. So it had been 2 years since Denis had beaten a top 10 opponent. Next one from Franny. Was Sonego's run only luck, or the fact that he changed his team and that team will make him improve? What do you expect from Berrettini this season after all his bad luck? Thank you, Gill. Appreciate it. Can we stop? Let's not call, when a player has a run and it's a run that is atypical of that player, like they played above their regular level. I don't love calling it luck. I don't know if luck is appropriate, because can we just be philosophical for a second? There's not a lot of luck in tennis, okay? Like, you play over the course of a match, it's one-on-one. You are playing oftentimes over 100 points. The officiating is not normally going to play a big role. There's not a lot of variables, okay? You're not going to hit a net cord on every point and win via luck. You're not going to shank a bunch of balls and they're all going to go in and be winners, right? Like, that's lucky. If you hit a shank and it's a winner, that's lucky, okay? But that's not how to win tennis matches. You don't win tennis matches with luck. Now, sometimes you play above your regular level. And I guess my take on the Sonego Australian Open run is that Lorenzo's a hot and cold player, always has been. I think his ceiling has always been very underrated. And this is a guy who's got 4 titles on his career, which is an amazing number for someone who has never been in the top 20. Okay, there are a lot of players who are inside the top 20 who have 4 titles or less. And Sonego, his career high is, well, it's 21, so he was almost there. But for him to have 4 titles, I think just speaks to how good he is when he's at his best. And by the way, he's done it in all 4 different conditions: indoor hard, outdoor hard, clay, grass. And that's because of his serve and his forehand. Like his serve plus one, when he's really rolling, it's overwhelming. I'm not expecting like a full career renaissance from Lorenzo Sonego at 29 years old. Look, his ranking, he might get a career high in his ranking because he's made a quarterfinal. So that goes a long way already. But at the end of the day, I don't expect that we've hit some sort of turning point in Lorenzo Sonego's career. And I will say the one area where there is luck in tennis is your draw. And if you want to be specific and say Sonego got lucky with his draw, then I'll accept that. He did not beat, his best win was Fabian Marozsan, 59 in the world. That was his best win on that run. So, he was the higher ranked player 3 out of those 4 wins. While it might be surprising on paper that Sonego made the Australian Open quarterfinals, if you look at that, it's not so surprising anymore. Next one from Steven. Hey, Gill, thanks for your content as always. Let's talk Fonseca. As poised and undaunted as he appears on the court, I was really taken with how comfortable he looked in the AO press conferences. Usually these teens understandably look a bit like a deer in headlights, but Fonseca was up there looking like a veteran in the press room. I think this is also a crucial facet to becoming an elite player early in one's career, having that professionalism at such a young age. Similar feeling with Mensik. What do you think? I totally agree. And there's maybe numerous aspects to it. I think the word professionalism, which you use, Steven, is it's an important one because to me, you can't be as good as Fonseca is at his age if you're not wise beyond your years in terms of professionalism. And some players just don't have that. Some players are not going to really take themselves seriously enough until they're 19, 20 years old. You look at a Tommy Paul. He was not professional. You look at a Cam Nouri. He was not professional. He went to college and he was not professional. So, and I think these guys they'd admit that, right? So some guys just don't have it right away. That's okay. But I think in order to be on the Fonseca track where you're already as good as he is, you've got to be really mature and really dedicated and really grounded. There's one other thing here. Oh, I think the other thing is extroversion. If you're comfortable with people, there might be a correlation to just being comfortable in a big stadium. If you just have that sort of, I guess if you're somebody who naturally doesn't get stage fright, whether it be in front of the media, on the court. Now, sometimes those things don't really align. Think about Naomi Osaka, for example. Osaka was honestly a stone-cold killer when it comes to playing under pressure in big stadiums at slams, but then in a press room, she was like what's the word? I'm forgetting the phrase that I'm looking for. Whatever. You get the point. She was very, very shy. Okay, let's put it like that. So sometimes it's not a one-to-one, but sometimes it is. Next one is from Brian. I want to rapid fire through these last few because I don't want to go too much longer. All right, from Brian. Great idea for this one, Gill. I was definitely getting Sinner, Alcaraz, Djokovic fatigue. I'm a big Marcos Giron fan. He seems really nice, humble guy who has overcome a lot of physical setbacks early on, yet he has been able to touch the mid-30s ranking. Every year he has made notable improvements to his game and is clearly willing / able to listen / make changes. For example, the Agassi advice on his forehand. Where would you put his ceiling? I'm hopeful that he will crack the top 30. Thanks, and always the highlight of my day when you post. Appreciate that. Top 30, I think that would be like his ceiling. So I think if he touches inside the top 30, that would be great for Giron. I love that he's playing more aggressive with the forehand. He's trying to be imposing off of that wing. Really kind of on point advice from Andre because at the end of the day, Marcos has a really good forehand. It's flat and it is pinpoint precise. And when you put those two things together, it's like, okay, let's use that. let's make that a weapon. Instead of relying so much on the legs and the fitness and the athleticism, which Giron would fall into the trap of. That said, I don't see the backhand really turning around or the serve turning around or improving enough to really push him to the next level. So I think he can crack the top 30. I'm not convinced he will. Next one is from Adam. Curious if you saw any of Kovacevic in Montpellier. If so, thoughts on his ceiling? I feel like he's almost Roger Federer's clone. Fun tidbit, I went to middle school with him and used to train with him for a few years under Galad Bloom. So happy to see him succeeding on tour. Yeah, he is so talented, okay? That was really obvious from watching him in Montpellier. Really quick conditions, indoor conditions. So if you're a skilled offensive player, it gives you the ability to work your magic. And it looked really great for Kovacevic, who's also got a really beautiful game to watch. But he obviously doesn't do that every week. Like, you look at his challenger record last year, it was 2-6. He played 6 challengers last year, and he never made a quarterfinal. So clearly you have a guy who's capable of great heights, but he's not bringing it week to week to week to week. I don't know what the cause of those inconsistencies are, but it's clear that those inconsistencies exist. From Patrick, what is the ceiling of Fabian Marozsan as a player? Can he make the top 20? I think he can make the top 20 for sure. He's a pretty interesting ball striker. Very, very easy power. I wonder almost, he's got some Manarino, in my opinion. Because when I say easy power, I don't mean that he's crushing the ball. But I do mean that he is not swinging very fast and the ball tends to kind of still come off his racket really hard. But he has great redirections and he hugs the baseline. And I think his ground strokes are difficult to read. So he has this sort of funky offensive baselining style and comes to the net well and obviously hits the drop shot a ton. So I like his offense. He doesn't love to defend much. And what I think is the biggest area that he can improve is his serve. It's not a good first serve, especially for 6'3". But I think he'll be in the top 20 at some point, yeah. This one's too long, I'm sorry. Let's go to Luca. Thoughts on the new improved version of Jaume Munar? He's playing very aggressively and has a great game. He's playing really underrated stuff. I got many Munar comments, and so good to see. So good to see this from Jaume, who I've always loved watching him compete. I think he's got a great attitude, and he loves the game. And that was evident. Jason Goodall asked him this week about what his mentality is, as he's kind of always been a player. The last several years, he plays some challengers, he plays some tour events, he plays some challengers, he plays some tour events. And Jason was like, I don't know what the question was exactly, but it was something along the lines of, what is your mentality when you play lower level tournaments? And Jaume was like, well, I don't mind playing lower level tournaments because I love tennis. He's just like, yeah, I love tennis, so I don't really care. And I'm just like, what a freaking answer to that. What's interesting is he's been trying to play more aggressively the last couple years, and especially off the ground, especially with his forehand. It hasn't always worked, and now it's just clicking. And I think it speaks to the fact that sometimes you need a little bit of pain to eventually get the gain. And I think that's what we've seen with Munar. But what I love so much is the offensive stuff seems completely additive, because I still find him to be ultra consistent. I still find him to be great defensively, and he never gets tired of running. And there's just, the fitness is so good, because you can run him coast to coast to coast to coast, 20-shot rally, and then the next point, he's willing to do it again. And I mean, that's a great superpower that Munar has. That said, his serve is actually pretty big. He will come forward and finish you off at the net. It's not the best volleying that you'll see, but it's there. And now he's going after the ball off the ground. So he's become just a much more well-rounded player. And it's great to see somebody who I think narratively was stuck for a lot of years because he was just always between 50 and 85 in the rankings. Like, he just spent, or I could even say maybe like 55 and 80 in the rankings. He spent 5 years there. And it just felt like, okay, we know exactly who Jaume Munar is. He is set. He is who he is, and that's it. It's great when a guy kind of breaks out of that and sort of surprises everybody. Munar, coming into this year, had never made a hardcourt semifinal tour level, and now he's made 2. He started the year with one in Hong Kong, and now he's done another in Dallas. All right, lastly, from Jonathan, what are your thoughts on Brandon Nakashima and what he has to do to increase his ranking? I'm a little bit stumped, honestly. I'm a little bit perplexed at what Brandon should do or can do. The problem is he's not breaking serve. I think he's broken serve 6 times in about 12 or 13 sets to start 2025. Remember last year he was the 8th highest hold rate guy. So he was holding serve as often as Dimitrov and Fritz in 2024. Holding serve is not his problem. He's got the most underrated delivery in all of men's tennis, in my opinion. But then he's not always capitalizing because he's not able to break. And I think just from the back of the court, him being a very kind of average mover, plus he's got a pretty average forehand, it makes it hard for him to win baseline rallies. The combination of those two things. So, he doesn't threaten you that much from the back of the court at the end of the day. You feel comfortable trading ground strokes with him. You don't think he's going to come up with anything massive. And then he doesn't move all that well, so you feel like he's not that difficult to damage. At the end of the day, he's not winning enough rallies. He got destroyed against Nishioka in the rallies. All right, going to end it on that. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.